people don't realize the power of their voice. People don't realize the impact. Literally, one phrase before we're 5 years old can determine how we use our voice the rest of our life. I mean, the voice is a very powerful instrument.
So today on CLevel, I have Tracy Goodwin. She is a voice command coach. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. So Tracy, welcome.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here with you. Excited to have this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun because, there's, obviously I've worked in the entertainment business for the majority of my life, trained as an actor. Voice is something that we work on, but we're going to be talking about how this correlates in the business world and why it's important for CEOs to be able to command their voice. So before we get into that, let me get a little bit of background on you, Tracy. Tell me your story. How'd you get into voice coaching?
Well, it definitely was not on my radar, but at an early age, I started at 12 years old, started winning speaking awards and wanted to be an actor like you. And actually in the early years of my career, I did television commercials, but I had all these experiences that kept leading me down the voice track. And so literally for over 30 years, I've been coaching voices. Before social media, people kept finding, CEOs kept finding me, companies kept finding me to coach their voices. In the early years of my career, I did a lot of accent work, a lot of dialect work. And one thing led to another, went to work for Mike Nichols in New York. I taught at his school for many, many years. I was in New York and then I was out in LA. So it found me, Chris. It found me.
That's awesome. So when we're working with clients, how do you start, working with them? What are some things that you do to kind of identify some areas of opportunity and coaching with them?
Well, the way that I do voice is a little bit different. The methodology that I created is called psychology of the voice. And I literally approach this from the perspective of how are they being perceived in the subconscious of the listener. I believe that voice starts as an inside job because the subconscious is actually what puts the voice in. And so the first thing we have to identify is how are you being perceived? What is your team? What is your staff? What are your potential customers and clients thinking about you in the subconscious? And what is the noise in your head? And that kind of stuns people a little bit, that's the first place I go because they think I'm going to say, speak louder, slow down. And I do. But as long as you've got noise in your head that says something like, nobody wants to hear what you have to say, or you better hurry up and get that out there right quick, we're not going to be able to change the habit as long as we've got the noise. So that's the first things I identify. And I start in the mind.
That is so good. And it's what we learn in acting school too, is you gotta shed all that, right? You have to be present in the moment. And, it's funny when I watch a lot of, beginning actors and people that are starting to get that's what we call it, stuck in your head.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, whether it's an actor, whether it's a CEO giving a speech, it's funny. Sometimes it feels longer in your head, but it's not when you're saying it. It's interesting. And so having a clear mind before before anything comes out your mouth is very important.
Yeah, I call that perception reception. And my data shows me that 99.5% of the time, what we think they're thinking, they're not thinking. And we sabotage ourselves in many, many ways because we think it's going on forever, or like pausing. Okay. Everybody hates the pause. It's the most powerful tool. And in our mind, it feels like, okay, I've stopped talking for 5 minutes. And it was like a second.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Well, and in sales too. So like there's this little sales technique, right? Whether it's through Sandler or one of these other things, to where when you are positioning a product and you present a price, every good sales rep knows that the moment you say a number, you need to be quiet because the first person that speaks loses. And sometimes that awkward pause is difficult for people, right? And so what you're doing is you are using your voice to help guide the sale, which I think that's kind of interesting as well.
Well, in sales, voice is so critical, and I know you know that. And one of the things that people don't realize, and I say this to salespeople all the time, and this is so simple and it makes sense, but I don't know if people realize it from a voice perspective. Let's say you're doing cold calling
Mm.
and you no, 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 you bring that no in, you have just foreshadowed
Yeah.
vocally to tell that next person you don't think they're going to buy, and they
Right.
don't buy,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's all in your voice or that pause. And I love what you said about, that pause. And really what we have to do is we have to learn to get comfortable in the uncomfortable of that, because it's truly the most powerful thing that a voice coach can give someone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and I like what you said about but T sales, telephone sales, right? You're selling people. That's all they have is your voice. Like so.
Yeah.
Before I got into the entertainment business, I was inside sales. I actually sold advertising over the phone, and what I was finding is that same thing. Is because obviously, when you're cold, back in the day when you were pounding the phones to cold call, you were getting no, no, no. But what I've learned is that you start every single conversation with a smile. If
Yeah.
you smile, it literally people can hear that in the phone if you just smile. So before the next call, put on a smile, genuinely put on a genuine smile, start your conversation, because that actually helps guide the sales call, because you're not bringing that negative energy of that last no.
Well, yeah, and I call it that's beautiful, and I call that the difference in light versus heavy. When you smile, you lift your voice lifts. Well, that is going to be more persuasive and influential than if I come in and I'm like, "Hey, Chris, do you want to buy some advertising because nobody's buying it?"
Right.
Right?
Right.
And I love that you said that about voice and the phone sales, but as an entrepreneur, or maybe even for business people, I'm not sure so much if CEOs are on it yet, but that new platform, Clubhouse,
Oh gosh, it's great.
all voice,
Oh yeah.
all voice.
Yep.
We'll never see your face.
Yep. Yep.
Critical.
Yep. Yeah, and it's extremely powerful. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
because now you're and this is obviously not a plug for Clubhouse, but I mean, I think it's great. I think
Yeah.
these new platforms come up, especially podcasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is and it's something that our company helps a lot of CEOs do, is launch their own podcast, but working on your voice, working on how you're delivering a message is going to be extremely important, especially if you want to have a successful podcast.
Well, and I think podcasts are crucial. I think having a podcast and being guest on podcasts are some of the most important work that I do for my business. Just even from a service perspective, to be able to reach more people and expand my brand, but to be able to help people change their lives in a powerful way. I'm a huge podcast fan,
Yeah.
and voice again is everything.
Yeah. That's, I, what I really, and I speak a lot. I mean, I've been doing, obviously a lot of it has been virtual now, but I always take the approach, like, even when, so let's say a CEO or somebody is giving a presentation, your cadence, you're telling a story, like the way that you're going about presenting whatever product, whatever it is, you're telling a story. But what my old acting coach used to say is you're coloring your words, right? And that always rang true to me, because if you're trying to deliver a message and you want people to stay engaged, your delivery is going to be really important, because, you always have that classic, graduation speech guy that goes on there and it's wah, 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 right? It's like people start tuning out. And so having control of your voice and having control of a good cadence, you're telling a story. And what do people love? They love stories.
Well, yeah, for sure. And it's about creating an experience. I want to start talking about emotional connection. That's the power of my voice. My words, science has now proven, do not have the power to make you feel, but how I say those words, that creates the emotional connection. That makes you feel oh, Tracy gets me, or oh, Chris knows exactly what I'm talking about. Now we're working on a whole nother plane. Now we're working on a whole nother realm that is so much more powerful in business because I know who you are, I know how you feel, and now I can connect to that. And that's what happens when you roll in all that vocal variety like you're talking about. It's critical.
That's so awesome. Yeah. I mean, connecting on an emotional level,
Mm-hmm.
and we're emotional human beings, right? And so knowing kind of like how to deliver a specific message. Chris, I think his name is Chris Voss. He's an interrogator.
Ah, love
And
him.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so he talks about mirroring, right? Like when he's
Mm-hmm.
questioning, like mirroring that question, mirroring what that answer, right, to that person. But that's a psychological thing. It's, hey,
Yeah.
I'm taking in what you're saying. I'm your friend. Well, you can even correlate that into, business or to a sales role, right? Is I'm understanding what you're saying, I'm listening, I'm paying attention. And I think listening is as much as important, if not more than speaking, taking that in and then delivering it back in communication. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. And I can take that even one step further. And when we have listened and then we talk to the person, we have a circular edge to our voice that is easily absorbed. When we don't even listen and I'm formulating my answer, then I'm going to talk at you and I'm going to have an angular edge, and your subconscious is going to reject that. But I want to say something else about Chris Voss because I read his book. I was intrigued anyway. But when he said, I don't know if you've read his book or heard him say this, but when he said, we would go in with the late night DJ voice, is what he would call it. Well, what he was talking about was a quiet bit, which is the second most powerful tool. And it's about inviting me in. Are you pushing me away or are you pulling me close? Now we need both,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
We need all of it, but that takes it back to your comment about the not. When we stay on one note, you've told me who you are. You've given me permission to check out.
Yeah.
So we want to, it goes back to that creating that experience and listening and how do I want you to feel?
Yeah.
When I talk to you, in my mind, I shouldn't be thinking about the words. I should be thinking about how do I want this person to feel about what I'm saying, which
Yeah.
is critical in business, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, when you were saying that, I was kind of envisioning like this, like if a wave pattern goes up and
Uh-huh.
down, it's almost like a roller coaster. You're literally taking them on a ride, a journey,
Yeah,
right? I don't know. It just came to me, but that's how I kind of envisioned it. Is because people want that journey.
that's it.
That's what people will hang on. And if it's the same monotone delivery, that most people are going to check out with that.
Well, our brain tells us to check out every 7 seconds now.
Mm.
When I started this work 30 something years ago, it was like 90 seconds. But now it's 7 seconds. So if you deliver everything with the same value, what incentive do I have to stay when I've got Facebook or a podcast? Or, I remember a businessman saying to me one time, it was a call center type thing. He said, what do I do when I know they're playing Angry Birds on the other end of the line, Tracy? And my answer was, well, we need to be more captivating
Yes.
because you've missed your 7 second mark and they've checked out.
Yeah. So important. That's so
Mm-hmm.
important. I mean, I think of communication with people, right? So one on one, right? And so in the acting world, what I always used to say is like, you've got to be staying present in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And delivering, and then receiving, right? And so you gotta, and I guess this is something that maybe I guess you can learn over time or whatever, but when you're receiving, you can kind of almost get that emotion coming from the other person, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you feel that they're starting to check out, there might be a way that you can change your delivery a little bit to keep them re-engaged so they don't go off and play Angry Birds, right?
Right. Well, I think I'm going to go back to insight on this. First and foremost, we have to release, I've got to get this right. And we have to start working from the place of What is it I really need you to know? And trusting that I'm going to get it right. And then we've got to release judgment, because as long as I'm worried about what are you thinking about me, I can't be here in the now with you. I can't speak from, look, the voice is the orchestra of the heart. I have to be able to speak from my heart and trust that I have the words right. And those concepts alone are oftentimes not what the world teaches us to do. The world teaches us, well, you're going to get judged if you don't get it right. So now I'm delivering somebody I'm not. Well, that's never going to work, right?
Right. Right. Well, and authenticity too. Like when when you're delivering a speech, see, I talk to a lot of different CEOs about this. Is like acting is way different than when you're on a stage delivering a speech. You need to be as authentic as possible because people can see right through that, right? And
Yeah,
it's not, you want to be able to deliver a great message, and that's really got to stem from being you, and not taking that judgment from other people.
that's it. And the world, I call it tentacles out versus tentacles in. The world trains us to read the room to see how we're doing. And I'm not saying don't do that, but I don't want that to change who I am. I want to give you the best version of me. And then if I need to turn the gas up and down on that, maybe I'm a little loud, maybe I'm a little expressive. Okay, I'm going to turn that down, but it's still going to be me.
Mm.
And that's where it gets real important to know the difference, I think, because if I'm trying to be what I think you want me to be, well, I don't even know what you want me to be.
Right.
Right. And that's a trap.
Yeah, no, just be yourself. Just be yourself. That's one thing that I've learned, through my journey is, it's interesting. Like, when you're given a script, it's one thing, but when
Mm-hmm.
you're out on stage, and now it's just you and raw. Like, you can't be everything to everybody. You have to be yourself. You have to, I talk to a lot of CEOs that their first time maybe doing a podcast or being on a camera, and I try and kind of coach them and be like, just be yourself. It's no,
Yeah.
you don't have to put on some huge performance or anything like that. It's you're having a natural conversation with somebody, and you do this every day. So
Yeah.
get it out of your head. Your lighting doesn't need to be perfect and all this other stuff. You're just pushing out content, whether it's you're giving a Zoom presentation or you're doing a podcast. Just be you.
And I think that's such a good permission slip, something you just said. And I say this to people all the time: stop raising the stakes. It's just a conversation. You do it every day. But then all of a sudden, we get all this noise in our head about, I've got to get this right, and I've got to make this impression, and I've got to look good. And I bet you're seeing it like I'm seeing it. The pandemic and everybody going on camera has flipped a lot of people out because it's so weird and different and new. And now all of a sudden they're like, okay, this is weird. And they're getting more introspective. Are you seeing that too?
Yeah, I mean, and again, like it's funny because I before the pandemic, like, we've been helping a lot of people with, starting podcasts and doing these things. And then after the pandemic, like everybody's like jumping on like, I need to be doing this, I need to be doing this, but they've never been trained. Like,
Right.
because there's certain things in delivering a message, obviously your voice is extremely important, obviously on the audio podcast, but even in video, understanding how to leverage your camera, even like, hey, if I wanted to engage you, kind of like how you're talking about, like the bringing you in the soft speak.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I could lead into my camera and talk to you this way and say, listen, and I can, right. And so there's different things, actions you can do in leveraging this new virtual world to make you a better communicator.
Yeah, for sure. And it's nothing to be fear. It's nothing to be afraid of.
Mhm.
It's really, and I've said this for a long time, and you probably have too, it's not going away.
No. Mm-mm.
I mean, this is,
It's new normal.
even when we go back to showing up live and in person,
Yep.
this isn't going anywhere.
Right. Right. Yeah, audio and podcasts and stuff, is has increased tremendously, obviously, since the start of the pandemic. I mean, there's more content that's being consumed now than ever on social. And
Yeah.
so making sure that, this is only going to add to that aspect, but, hey, they said 50% of people are going to want to be working from home from here on out. I mean, I just heard a statistic that there's
Wow.
more employees that are willing to take a pay cut just to work at home. A lot of
Wow.
people are staying home. And so
Yeah.
you got to be able to effectively communicate on social media, specifically, if you're doing any type of audio podcast or audio video podcast.
Yeah. And here's the thing, it's really just new techniques.
Yes.
It's like if I wanted to learn accounting
Yeah.
or architecture, or there really are, as long as you have a technique, you can do this.
Yeah.
And you need to really make a big impact, because as the marketplace gets more crowded, you really want to use your voice to make the best impact with your message that you can. And so a few techniques goes a long way, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you see this, but people don't realize the power of their voice. People don't realize the impact. Literally, one phrase before we're 5 years old can determine how we use our voice the rest of our life. I mean, the voice is a very powerful instrument.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're coming up to the top of our episode here, and so if there was one piece of advice in communication to a leader or CEO, what would that be? What would you give them?
Ooh, just one. I'm gonna slide two together,
Okay.
and I would say and there are things that we've talked about, but they're critical. Getting in the now is so important, especially many CEOs are outcome driven, they're problem solvers. But when you are in that outcome and you're talking to your team, there's a disconnect. You can know the outcome, you can have solved the problem when you're talking to the client or the prospective customer, but you've got to get in the now and have a conversation. Even if you're solving the problem, you can see it out of your periphery, but I like to say it as, get me in the plane before you take off down the runway, because I don't know what you know. And I don't know the solution to the problem. I'm not there. I'm here, even if I'm on your team. So get back in the now and have a conversation. It may feel slower, but you're going to save more time than you know what to do with.
That is amazing. That so get in the now, be in communication with your team. I love this phrase, the get in the plane before you leave the runway. That is just awesome advice. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on today's episode.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, make sure you mash that like button and subscribe so you get the latest episodes. And if somebody else needs to hear it, please do them that favor and share it.